Okay, I think I'm on. Yeah. It is my pleasure to be here. This is what I would call a pregnant time that we're in. And what it is going to give birth to, none of us knows. But we are certainly in labor. We certainly are dealing with some pretty incredible energies in the world right now. What I'm going to do today is a little different than what I've done in the past, largely because my recent travels have been international. I've spent a lot of time traveling in the world, and so I kind of have a read, a pulse on things that are happening in global Africa. And as a part of global Africa, we need to really lean in right now. And I was at a talk yesterday, was it? Yesterday, my days are blurring, for Black infant health. And I said to them, and I'm saying to every audience I'm in, two things. One is, and I told you this 10 years ago, we were dangerously underestimating what was coming. Dangerously underestimating it. And the second thing is this revolution cannot be televised. It is a revolution that needs to happen on a whole nother level. Not like anything we've seen in recent history. I mean, Harriet Tubman knew how to do it. Others before us knew how to do it. And what we need to know, and I'm saying this particularly for the young people, and that is that while we were kind of distracted by the clown, while we were distracted looking at all the antics and all of the smoke and mirrors that were going on, laws were changed in this country. And particularly around protest. So what used to be peaceful protest, what used to be kind of okay in terms of people, shouting and doing what they do, those have been turned into domestic terrorism charges. And they will disappear you. Do you understand me? And our young people need to know that before they take to the streets. Are you following me? It's not the same day we're in. And they mean to do something very differently. 2025 was a real edict that they created and have every intention of fulfilling. And so that is part of what we are seeing right now. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to integrate I don't think my clicker is on. Oh, it is. How did you do that? This is technology I wasn't aware of. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to integrate information. How many people here are newly acquainted with my work? Or are you just finding out about my work? Show of hands. Okay, good. So most people here have a good, and that's what I was hoping, that everyone had a kind of a grounding. Those of you that this is new to you, I'll try to pull you along in terms of the work itself. My work, the body of work that I looked at for many years was the idea of multi-generational trauma, and I specifically zeroed in on people of African descent, which makes sense to me. I want to look at me and my people. I have 4 degrees. 3 of those are advanced degrees in clinical psychology, social work, and research. I tell you that to tell you that with my 4 degrees, none of it taught me what I needed to write my book. None of it. So you have to appreciate that in order for me to write a book that was historically accurate, that had to do with people that look like me, I had to do a whole other set of research. Now, what you also need to know about that research is that it wasn't obscure information. It wasn't difficult to find. It just was left out intentionally. So when we send our kids to school, we need to understand that the curricular materials that they are given are not going to be about them. All 2 pages of Black history, if that's there anymore. And even what is there is distorted. So what we have to recognize and we have to understand is that we have to educate ourselves and our families. That's unfortunate. We spend lots of money. People send kids to Ivy League, all of that. That's not where they're going to learn about them. It's not designed that way. People often ask me, Dr. DeGruy, how do we fix the system? And I tell them, the system isn't broken.
That's right.
It's not broken. Repeat after me. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it achieves. So if you are looking at disproportionality in terms of arrests, in terms of policing, in terms of joblessness, all of those things, understand that the system is designed for that to be the result. So we keep thinking we're going to fix the system, and the system is not broken. It's just never been designed for or about you. Now, we have existed in far worse conditions. That's why I'm having here this notion of embracing hope in a climate of uncertainty. Because one of the things we have to understand is that, my God, do you understand what our ancestors went through? I mean, come on, what are we whining about? I mean, honestly, it's deep, but it's not as deep as it was. So we have to appreciate that we do have to remember that. We have to resist, we have to have resilience, and we have to repair. All of those things have to happen simultaneously. It's not either or one and done. It is a consistent issue because we are consistently being put upon with whole new levels of terrorism. Anti-blackness is alive and well and has been exported all over the world. So that's something that we need to understand. But this is not the time to be paralyzed. I read a wonderful scripture that said, be alarmed, but not paralyzed. And we can't afford to be, because you have to understand we're modeling for the young people who and what they are and how they are and whose they are. We are modeling that behavior, whether you believe it or not. And it's not actually, by the way, based on the research, it's not based on what we tell them. It's based on what they see when we're not looking. That's what your kids do. They look at not what you say, but what you do and say when you're not looking. That's what they hear. They hear the phone calls. They hear how we talk about family and friends. We call that, in my group, which I'm a part of now, called the Global Circle for Reparations and Healing. Part of the Global Circle is pulling out the elephants that are in the room. And the way we do that is we look at healed versus unhealed behavior, but we'll talk about that. All of this to kind of help you know where we're going. When we begin to define history, I love what James Baldwin says here. He says, history is not merely something to be read, and it does not refer merely or even principally to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways. And history is literally present in all that we do. It could scarcely be otherwise, since it is to history that we owe our frames of reference, our identities, and our aspirations. We are a walking reflection of history. And so what we have to understand is what's embedded in us, even in our very DNA. In fact, the DNA of the world is African. And we understand that also embedded in that are all of the practices, all of the sorrows, all of the victories of the past. They come with us. And it gives us the potentiality to move beyond harm. I just do this just so we can keep up with what's going on. The mass shootings, for example, in the United States is at 223 right now, 2026. They started taking account of this in January of 2013. Since then, there have been 7,243. And how many days since the last shooting? That would be yesterday, mass shooting in Texas. So alive and well, as we begin to look at this, I'm gonna try to fold in history, and contemporary behavior. So in 2023, the U.S. had a rise in hate. The FBI reported at that time that the United States was experiencing the highest levels of hate violence on record. That was 2023. I would suggest that it's gotten far worse since then. But we're never going to hear about it anymore because you see these areas have come under the control of a singular voice. So we often talk about freedom. It is what our ancestors, it is what our people, and it is what, in fact, people all over the world cherish, cry, and fight for, is freedom. Well, the definition of freedom, if you just look it up, is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. And in my opinion, it is that freedom that got us here. Without restraint, without any hindrance, you get to do and say and act on whatever you want based on what's between your ears. That's freedom. That's bondage. That is when you are trapped. And it's interesting that we cry for freedom and we aren't quite certain what we mean by that. Because you see, it does not embody spirit or spirituality or truth necessarily. It's just what I want. Are you following me? Right. So we have to even be careful about how we talk about things because we lose our minds around stuff like this. And then we wonder, where did we lose our minds? And in how we interpret reality. Then there's a definition of a standard. A standard is a required or agreed level of quality or attainment, principles of conduct informed by notions of honor and decency. How many people in the audience have standards you live by? You got some bottom lines. Thus far and no farther. We're not crossing this line. We have those things. I have standards that I live by. And I can say this to you, I fail them regularly. Because my standards are high. I place very high standards, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, in terms of what my expectations are of myself. They're very high, and I fail them. So for me, my standard is constantly trying to achieve. I'm never going to stop trying to achieve the standard. Here's what I don't do, though. I don't change the standard because I fail it. So, for example, if we look at a standard most people are familiar with, whether you agree with it or not, thou shalt not lie. Let's just take a look at that one. That one has a 100% failure rate. 100%. And nowhere is anyone going to go, well, you know, since statistically speaking, it's just not reasonable or plausible for human beings to not lie. Let's just bring lying on in. Let's just get rid of that, you know, that it's a bad thing. Are you following me? You don't move the standard because you fail it. We reach for it. We try to attain it. But in this world of ours, when things don't feel right for us, we just move it around. We change the rule. And when that happens, you're looking at the destruction of a civilization. That's how civilization begins to fall, when all of a sudden you value technology over community. You value competition over cooperation. When that starts happening, that's not my opinion. That spells the toppling of a civilization. It is one of the signs of the deterioration of a society. And then there's a definition of virtue, a trait of excellence, including traits that may be moral, social, or intellectual. It is one of those things where it doesn't matter what you believe or what your religion is or not. Virtue is something that all over the world is embraced. You're not going to have people saying, well, you know, I think hate's a good thing. Let's just zero in on it. No, you're going to have people wanting to look at truthfulness, wanting to look at patience and forgiveness and love and honor and courage. All of those are virtues, you see. And each virtue plays upon the others. But there are some virtues that, whoops, wrong way, we have to take a look at in a different way. Now, I'm showing you this slide for one reason. I spent quite a bit of time going back through and trying to figure out what, this is changing every second, by the way. Every second, these are changing. But I want you to see something, because this is going to be the foundation of why we are in the position we're in right now in America. This right here marks the concern. Not just a concern, but what I consider to be a pathological fear. This slide demonstrates where that fear is coming from and why. No matter how you view this, a cursory look at these numbers and these people, and anyone on the planet knows that the majority of our blue marble are people of color. That's just the majority of the earth. And when you begin to look at those numbers and examine them, you recognize that there is one group of people that is actually shrinking in number. In other words, more people are dying than are being born. And that's Europe and Europeans. And it is creating a pathological fear. Fear of replacement, fear of annihilation. It is driving so much of what you are seeing happening in the world. And so it's not my opinion, but the big one is this in blue. By the year 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. Now look at the growth, right column. Look at the growth. Nothing is near African in terms of growth and young youth. It's a youthful reality, and that is terrifying people. And it's interesting the response we get, just so that we can, kind of take a look at this. I mean, every now and then I go back and try to fix my, my numbers, but the reality is it's going to come up over and over again, and Europe and the United States become less and less significant. For example, right now, India is currently the second largest English-speaking country in the world after the United States. And in 10 years, they're going to surpass the United States. My dear brother and colleague, Brian Stevenson, said that the opposite of poverty is not wealth, the opposite of poverty is justice. And I believe that the opposite of ignorance is not knowledge. Opposite of ignorance is truth. And I believe that truthfulness is indeed the foundation of all the virtues of the world of humanity. In other words, any other virtue you're trying to attain, you cannot attain without truthfulness. Are you following me? It is the fundamental, foundational virtue that is the bedrock of all the others, because you cannot attain to any of them without truthfulness. And often, people who know me and know my work, because I did a lot of clinical mental health work for many, many, many years. Matter of fact, you never stop being a clinician. I took my shingle down a long, long time ago, but it didn't matter because people still call me at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, what had happened was. So you were always on no matter what. Just like all my friends that are physicians, I have a lot of friends that are physicians, they get the call, look. What had happened was, I need someone I trust. And I mean that. I pick every single one of my physicians. And I have to basically make certain that I'm not dealing with someone that on a fundamental level may not like me. So I need to clear all that up on the front end. I can't have you, I just can't have you being someone that goes to Klan meetings on the weekends. You know what I mean? I can't. I want to rule that out. Right? So I'm very intentional about anyone that deals with me. I got to rule that out. And it is indeed the secrets that make us sick. It is. In my family, I found out some secrets. I mean, in my big adult life, I found out secrets I didn't know anything about. I found out a most incredible secret just a couple weeks ago. wasn't even a couple of weeks, a week ago, I found out that my family members in Louisiana, 6 of them were lynched. I had no idea. But again, I started to try to unpack why I didn't know. Why didn't my dad tell me? Why didn't my mom tell me? There is a DeGruy plantation in Louisiana that I knew nothing about. But you see, they internalized shame. It is not something they would speak of because it's shameful from their vantage point. So all I can imagine, they're all dead now, so I can't ask. But I recognize, how important it is for me to know who paid for me to be here, right? Because everyone in this audience, I don't care who you are, somebody paid for you to be here. Somebody did. And how dare we not honor and acknowledge them, right? But those who keep the secrets, and in each family, there's always those who hold the secrets. But secrets make you sick. They metastasize, literally, holding the secrets. So I tell people now, don't tell me because I'm going to tell. I'm not holding on to that with you. For many of us, it's so interesting. I'm in a lot of different audiences. And when I've been in these audiences with people, every background, every kind of race of people, I'm inevitably faced by people who want to help. They want to help. Dr. Joy, I don't know how to help. What can I do? And they're always asking me this. And there's a fundamental assumption that they run into, especially in white audiences, where people are just in absolute denial. It's kind of hard now, right? Because my grandchildren fact check me while I'm talking to them. Ema, such and such a thing. I go, well, I believe, and they are literally fact checking me. So I got to know my stuff because now you can just pull it up out of thin air. I can't even hide and pretend, and it's right there. So I really am always faced with people who are trying to arrive at some kind of healthy sense of what's going on. And inevitably you run into folks that are in denial. They're in absolute denial. And I mean, they look every kind of way, but they're in denial about what's going on in front of them. And when I read Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste, one of the things that I did was I took this from her book, because it's one of the things that I give to people of color, specifically for all of those white people that are finding it very, very difficult to just believe that anything happened that just wasn't right in the United States. They just struggle with all of it. Are you sure? Maybe you're overreacting. They start gaslighting you and stuff. Anyway, but I love this because it really helps put that to rest on a level. And then I up the ante after I share this, because it's good to just have it in your pocket and just hand it to those folks that are struggling. We in the developed world are like homeowners who inherited a house on a piece of land that is beautiful on the outside, but whose soil is unstable loam and rock, heaving and contracting over generations, cracks patched, but the deeper ruptures waved away for decades, centuries even. Many people may rightly say, I had nothing to do with how this all started. I have nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures built into the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars of joist, but they are ours to deal with now. And any further deterioration is in fact on our hands. Unaddressed, the ruptures and diagonal cracks will not fix themselves. Toxins will not go away, but rather will spread, leach, and mutate as they already have. When people live in an old house, they come to adjust to the idiosyncrasies and outright dangers skulking in an old structure. They put buckets under a wet ceiling, prop up groaning floors, learn to step over that rotting wood tread in the staircase. The awkward becomes acceptable, and the unacceptable becomes merely inconvenient. Live with it long enough, and the unthinkable becomes normal. Exposed over the generations, we learn to believe that the incomprehensible is a way that life is supposed to be. We normalize things in this life. For example, one of the clear indicators that we normalize some of these behaviors we should not is the amount of stress that Black people experience on a daily basis. We normalize the levels of stress. I remember when I started my doctoral program, and this was like a very intense private college that I attended, university, and they said to me immediately upon accepting me, they said, now you know this is a very rigorous program, and you just simply cannot work. You know you're not going to make it, you're going to flunk if you think you can work. And so, of course, I very comfortably said, oh, of course, I'm not going to work. I laugh out loud now because I'm going, yeah, right. I don't have like a trust fund there to catch me. Not only did I worked full time. So I worked full time, went to school full time, and was raising a family. Because that was just something I had to do. Wasn't no such thing as not going to work. Got to keep the lights on, right? Because you see, it wasn't part of my reality. And then I learned that I was the only Black person in the program. So what I did speak with my colleagues, my other fellow students, all of them were in therapy. Most of them, 90% of them were white women, 99% of them were white women, and they were all in therapy. They'd be in class crocheting, and I'm looking, they go, yeah, well, I have to see my therapist. I mean, this program is so stressful. I'm like, the program is stressful? Life is stressful. Let's make it plain, right? I grew up poor, and I grew up, while I was growing up, I didn't know I was poor, because everybody in the neighborhood was poor. So we didn't have lifetimes of the rich and famous. We didn't have all that. So, I grew up when it was, hey, go outside and play was magic words. That was my life. But when I got a little older, everybody was hustling. I remember I used to wonder, recently I went to the grocery store and it wasn't even whole check. I didn't go to Whole Foods. I went to regular store. One bag of groceries was $70. And I went, hold up, what? You know how the person in the line, I was that person in the line. I went, oh, wait, what in that bag could end up being $70? And it turned out that a bottle of olive oil that I normally bought had doubled in cost. I said, oh, well, let me just hold up in a line, because we're going to take this out. We're going to have to redo this, because that's not happening. But I'm wondering now about people who are just barely getting by, losing their food stamps, losing vital things, right? How are people getting by? And see, when in my day, it would be, okay, so my check's dropping on Friday, but the electric bill is due on Wednesday. So I called my friend, Renee. I said, Renee, I said, can you write me a check? We were floating checks. Now, nothing bounced, but we were floating checks because there wasn't no money there. That's because once the money hit my bank, I could pay you, and the way it just ding, 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 everything works. Now you can't do that. You can't float a check. They take the money out instantly instead of that couple days it used to take. Are you following me? And I'm saying this because this is what I had to do to survive. I also could say, look, I got to get across town. You give me $5. Put it in the tank. $5 is not going to get you a gallon. Right? I mean, I'm looking at this in a real way because I grew up stretching meals and learning how to, to manage my life. So what are people doing? Well, my son, who works with adjudicated youth and their families, he says that he works with families Working families, they're called the working poor. I guess that's what my mother and father would have been called, the working poor. Because no matter what, after the food stamps or any kind of assistance, there just wasn't enough left over. And so stealing, stay with me, is a part of how they plan the month. Okay, we're going to go, I'm going to run out about here, then we just got to steal. And we're not talking about going to Nordstrom and trying to steal. We're talking about food. Yeah. So they have factored in theft to survive. Are you hearing me? Yeah. This is real life stuff that people are doing. Because after the check is gone, after you've borrowed, after you've done all you can do, you know, theft is what these families were literally factoring in. So this is real life stuff that we see going on. And it becomes really important because when people start looking at you and saying, I just don't see it. I wasn't there. I wasn't there either. But it's real clear that we're all impacted by what happened. So now this is the other way I help people understand. I do this because you have folks that have different ways of knowing. So I want you to close your eyes. And this is really important, especially for people who are woke, people who are skilled and have degrees and such. So you are in your car. It is nighttime. And you could be the passenger or the driver, but you look ahead and you can see blinking lights. And as you approach, you realize that these lights are police cars. In fact, they're blocking the road in front of you and they're lining the street on either side of you. You look beyond the police cars in front of you and you see a yellow tape. Beyond the yellow tape, you see 3 young men on their knees with their hands handcuffed behind their backs, and they don't have shirts on. Now, open your eyes and tell me who you saw. Who'd you see? Anybody see 3 blonde-haired, blue-eyed boys? Anybody? No? Nobody? Okay, no takers. So you saw either 3 brown or 3 black young men. Are you hearing me? Yes. Now, statistically speaking, we make up about 13% of the population. That's not who you should have seen. But that's who you saw. And that was intentional. In fact, I took that little thing I did to high schools. I asked them the same thing. And they saw the same 3. I took it to middle schools. And they saw the same thing. I dared not take it to elementary schools. I didn't want that. I didn't want to forge it into their brains, though I knew it already was. So you see, no matter what you think, no matter how many degrees you have, how smart you are, how woke you are, you saw who they wanted you to see. You saw who was the bad guy. You saw who the criminal was, who the one that was worthy of arrest and imprisonment. That's who you saw. I went to Amsterdam, did a 3-day training in Amsterdam, asked people who could not even speak my language. They translated it and they saw the same 3. So you need to know that anti-blackness has been exported. But what's sad about it is that's what we see. Do you understand? That's seared into your consciousness, seared into your minds, intentionally. And that does not go away unless you interrupt it deliberately, consciously. If you're not doing that, you have that same deep down, by yourself belief. Here is a young man without a shirt on. Sometimes when black people see this photo, they immediately get concerned. But this is a story of a 16-year-old that dove in a local river to save some girls and the police officer that was trying to save them. He saved all of them. 16-year-old Corian Evans. I would submit to you that there are more people like him than the 3 on their knees. But we don't get to see him. This didn't hit the front page of the newspaper. That would only hit the front page if it was a drive-by or gang violence. Are you following me? And I'm not making this up. There are far more young men like him. Why don't we see this? The tenderness between a black father and his child. Scholarship, unity and love among black men. How come we don't see these? These are not the images our children are bombarded with. Not only in their own environments, there's no visible evidence of this either. And then when they go online, God help them. Hope they get to the right site. Graduates, stay with me. Indigenous people, Latinx people, or Latino, Hispanic people, black males. Every year, thousands do this. Thousands. Do you understand me? Everybody go, I've been to graduations. I'm going, do I have to stay to the end? You know, so many of them in the family. Because sometimes, you know, you had a kid, you got to go to this one and to that one. And we made the mistake and sat in the front, couldn't get up. Thousands every year. Our children don't see this. The young ones don't see any of this. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, we're normalizing the absence of what is normal. We've done it. I don't blame that on anybody else. That's got to be on us. This is North Carolina Central University. I mean, come on. Historically black colleges bursting at the seams. I am now the distinguished visiting scholar at Morehouse. This is Morehouse. This is more. Let me say something. When I started working at Morehouse, first of all, I didn't even care if they paid me. It was like because that was the full loop. I always wanted to eventually end up at a historically black college. Something I want to do. I live in Atlanta, so makes perfect sense. When I go to Morehouse, every single time. Now you got to understand. These are thousands and thousands of young men. I walk on the campus, and it's like. That's how I feel. You feel like a flower should pop up. Every single time, I tell my husband, every single time I show up there, that's how I feel. I walked on campus for the first time trying to figure out where I needed to be. Young brother is sitting at a table outside with his laptop open, with his headphones on. Sees me, takes off the headphones, walks over to me and says, is there anything I can do to help you? Can I show you where you need to go? And I said, oh, I'm looking. He says, well, let me tell you where that is. So now I'm walking. Another young guy is coming down he's on the phone. He's on the phone. He's walking this way. I'm walking that way. He sees where I'm walking, runs to the door to open it. This is I'm not, now I know I'm old and people try to take care of me. Don't get me wrong. I know that, you earn that. People, I let everybody help me. They say, this is for seniors. I want my bus pass. I want my little lunch voucher. I want everything, right? And I understand that. But these young men, you could not have, and I mean every day, no matter where I am on the campus, that is the reception that I receive. Because you see, they know who they are. They're clear. It gets reinforced every day to be a Morehouse man and what that means. And again, not perfect. No historically black college or any other college is perfect. But I'm telling you something, and it's right next to Spelman, which is right down the street from Clark. That come on, I'm in heaven when I'm walking around there. But somehow, do you know how it would affect black boys if they just saw the graduation? If are you hearing what I'm saying? If they could see themselves in mass as scholars. But we don't show it to them. We act like we don't know. And this is what I'm saying in terms of healing and centering this movement in healing, we must. Trump executive order. Let's take a look at what he did. The first thing he did is he said, well, we want to support historically black colleges and universities, remain integral to the American students' pursuit of prosperity and well-being, providing a pathway to a career and a better life. This order will continue the work begun during my first administration to elevate the value, 2 days later, he rescinds it. The Trump administration rescinds the White House initiative on historically black colleges, exactly 2 days later, right? And then he turns around and he boosts HBCU funding despite attacks on DEI. And I wondered, why did he say, are we going to give it to you? No, we're not. We're going to give it to you again. Mary Beth Gassman, Rutgers University and executive director of the Center for Minorities, I don't know what happened there, Minority Serving Institutions, states Trump administration's support for HBCUs while rejecting DEI sends a message that the president doesn't have an issue with black people in black spaces. He gets uncomfortable with black people being in spaces that he thinks belong to white people. So we need to unpack the things that we see and understand why. And the foundation of it is white supremacy. We have physicians. I mean, I always look at these pictures because it becomes very important, because if we don't show them, sometimes folk don't believe they exist. I spoke with, I actually read an article many years ago about a black physician. She wrote an article called, "My Black Skin Makes My White Coat Disappear." That's the name of the article. You can look it up. And she talked about walking up to meet her patients and them asking her, when's the doctor going to be here? Couldn't even see her. And some of them look just like her. Let's be clear. Every year, all over the country, oh my God, justice? We don't want it to look like that. Oh, come on, we can't have that. And they have systematically dismantled or silenced those folks. I love this one because this was in Air Canada in 2024. This was just a rotation, and father and daughter ended up on the same plane. Pilot, co-pilot, right? My friend, Gerald Higginbotham, he's retired now from American Airlines, but it's interesting when I saw him, I said, I gotta have his picture. He goes, I know. He said, that's why I step out and I greet everybody. Because he wants black children, white children, all kinds of children to know he exists. That it's a possibility. Does that make sense? Our children believe what they see, not what you say. And so if you don't make it happen, there's an organization in Rochester that is such a wonderful program they have called Pillars of Hope. It's called Pillars of Hope, and they go into classrooms. These are people in the community leaders. Everything from business folks to pastors, everybody that they see sometimes on the news, they come in and they just walk into the classrooms and greet the students. Just a small group, 5 or 6 of them, and you would think it was birthday, Christmas, everything. Oh my, Pillars of Hope, they're here in our classroom. They did that in their community so that these children are honoring their community people. Pillars of Hope. It does something for the pillars. It does something for the children. These are not things we have to wait for someone else to do. That's easy. Once a month, pick a classroom, go into it. That's something we could do. So we have to begin to confront the original lie. The original lie was that you have white superiority and black inferiority. That's the original lie. This lie has created lots of problems because it led to dehumanization. And it led to this notion of my self-concept. Even what we remind each other of. And I often tell the story of my experience in South Africa my very first trip to Africa. I've now been to, I think, 9 countries in Africa, but that was my first time on African soil. And I just remember African people and how they greeted me and how they treated me. And everywhere I went, whether I was in a very, very poor village or I was in the middle of the city, whether I was in South Africa, Durban, wherever I was greeted. And I was greeted from different tribal languages, from a variety of different backgrounds, socioeconomic, but it was always the same. I see you. That's what that greeting translated to. I see you. And what a powerful statement, right? To say, I see you. And especially when we live so invisibly here, right? And so when I started it happened everywhere. I recorded it, ended up putting in my book, all of those things, because it was such a profound experience. And then I had another experience when I got back from that 6-week trip to Africa. When I got back, I live in the hood, and I got back to being invisible. And I wasn't leaving the house. So the women, 8 other African women traveling with me through that 6 weeks, started calling and looking, asking, calling my sister, saying, did she come out? Yeah. Is she okay? How's she doing? Because I wasn't coming out the house. I was tired of being reminded of my invisibility. I was struggling. But one day I had to leave the house. I had to leave the house because there were a group of boys outside. And one of the kids ran in and said, there's a boy outside. He says he's going to beat up Nadim, that's my son, and he's going to pee on the car. Which could happen. So I had to go outside. So I go outside to find a group of little young boys. Nobody's over 10. Everybody's looking tough, right? And I look at what appears to be the ringleader, a real stout, tough-looking boy. I said, excuse me, has my son done something that I need to know about? Yeah, I want to know if he got some kind of eyeball problem. I said, look, I don't understand a word you said. What did you say? I want to know if he got an eyeball problem. Well, who he staying at? I said, hold up. You want to beat up my son because he was looking at you? He could have been looking at you because he thought you maybe want to go play a little Nintendo was the thing then. Nintendo inside. He could have been looking at you because you see a little hoop out here. Maybe thought you want to play a little one-on-one. Maybe he was looking at you because it's a park down the street and he thought maybe y'all could all go down there and kick it at the park. So all the little kids are looking at me like, whoa, lady, what's going on? I got therapeutic on them, right? So then I eventually gave them my spiel. We can't. I said, do you hear, gunshots? Do you hear sirens? That we have to take care of each other. We can't hurt each other. We got to stop doing that. I gave them my spiel. But it was there that a key part of post-traumatic, my work, came alive. In that moment, I remembered Africa. I see you. And I remembered African American. What you looking at? What? What you looking at? How could a 10-year-old boy not withstand a gaze? What does the gaze mean to him? Because you see, he didn't feel that way about little white boys. He felt that way about little black boys. Because little black boys were a reflection of him and a reminder of what he hated. Himself. Because I am not who I think I am. And I am not who you think I am. I am who I think that you think that I am. We arrive at our appraisal of ourselves based on the significant appraisals of those in our environment that we love, that we trust. And if those people hate the image in the mirror, so will I. So we have to deconstruct those thoughts and images, what we call the unhealed behavior. Whoops, wrong way. So we know based on science, this is a quick trip through history, we know where this whole notion, and I want you to remember those numbers. Remember the numbers, remember that's the bottom line. There's way too many of them and way too few of us. They're going to take over and or annihilate us. That's been the fear. That's the fear I feared for my life. The police officers have, the clubs, they have tasers and guns. and you have a person in jogging shorts, and I feared for my life. I feared for my life. Why are you fearing for your life? You hold all the weapons and all the power. Why are you afraid for your life? And you see, I think that is an epigenetic issue. I think white people have been waiting for hundreds of years for us to do to them what they did to us. They cannot believe that we're not around some corner planning and plotting to take them out, because it's what they would do. And we live with their delusion. Every single time, it's always around fear. Why are you so afraid? I mean, you got to ask that fundamental question. You have all of the power, the money, the weapons, and yet you're still afraid. See, that's a spiritual thing. I'm just saying. So you have them now begin to do what they need to do because they deem themselves. You got to understand, the sun never sets on the what? On the British Empire. The sun never sets. Europeans deem themselves to be, I mean, I'm not making it up. This is not pejorative. They've deemed themselves to be superior, intelligent, moral, and civilized. That's the first thing that shows up whenever that's who and what we are. But now you have to reconcile that belief, because you know it causes cognitive dissonance. It causes cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you are simultaneously holding in your mind, thought, heart, contradictory ideas, beliefs, habits, right? For example, let me kind of explain how cognitive dissonance works. So if you ever go to Portland, Oregon, I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying if you just find yourself there for some reason. It prides itself on being the whitest city in the United States. So if you decide to go to Portland, there's few things you're going to see. One is ugly clothes. It's where nice clothes go to die, I promise you. Everybody wears Birkenstocks with socks. I don't understand it, but here we go. And no matter where you are, you know, it's the kind of the bedrock of homeopathy, naturopathic medicine, you know, all of that's right there. So if you cough on the street, 3 people going to have echinacea on them. They're going to say, you need to have it. These are these folks. So you'll find someone that'll tell you, I'm vegan. I only eat organic. I do wear Birkenstocks with socks. I jog regularly, 3 to 5, miles a day. But I do smoke crack on the weekends. So what happens here, what's happening in this scenario is you have this person that's doing all this other stuff to somehow reconcile the conflict, the contradiction. Are you following me? So human beings cannot function with dissonance. So you have to do all you can to remove the dissonance. If you deem yourself mature, intelligent, civilized, moral, all of those things, and you are engaging in behaviors that are the antithesis of that, you have to do something to reconcile that behavior. Does that make sense? Not for 1, not for 2, but for hundreds of years. You are raping, pillaging, harming, selling, brutalizing, experimenting on people for hundreds of years. How do you stand there in the light of being moral and just and civilized? How do you go to church and sit in the pews? Are you following me? You got to do something to reconcile it, and it's not a small thing because everybody got to sign off. So you need to know that every major institution in America is governed by the principle of white supremacy. Every single one. I don't care what profession you're going in. I don't care what service you're going into. Understand at the bedrock of it, if it's America, is white supremacy. And you're going to be treated differently because of that. We don't even have to hide behind DEI. You got to understand, remember, every system is perfectly designed to produce the results it achieves. So we have here science, which is the highest bastion of everything, right? People say, well, I believe this. And someone else say, well, I believe this. And another person goes, well, you know, it's a scientific fact. See? It's a scientific fact. Now, I just want you to know science moves. Is Pluto a planet yet again? Or I don't know, right? Science gets stuff wrong all the time, but never owns it. We've had a paradigm shift, is what they'll tell you. So we now have to go to the sciences to legitimize hundreds of years of brutalizing people. Hundreds of years. Okay. So you have this individual, Carl, over there on top, Carl von Linnaeus, who now begins to, and you got to ask yourself, why is it this Swedish man who has never had any contact with the people he's talking about, how is it and why is it he's needing to describe their characteristics? Let's see what he says, though. He starts describing Homo americanus. Who would that be here in America? That would be the indigenous people. He says Homo americanus is reddish, choleric, obstinate, contented, and regulated by customs. Not a shred of science here, none, but he just said it. Homo europaeus, that would be white people, he says they are fickle, sanguine, that's mean of a healthy color, by the way, sanguine, blue-eyed, gentle, and governed by laws. Then you have Homo asiaticus, that would be Asians. They are sallow. Again, anybody that's not white has a kind of sickly color. Sallow, grave, dignified, avaricious, and ruled by opinion. Then you have Homo afer, black, phlegmatic, cunning, lazy, lustful, careless, and governed by caprice. These insights into what Linnaeus defined as racial characteristics have not a shred of science. And when my students in my graduate course get in their feelings about it, well, you know, Dr. DeGruy, we're looking at 1707 to 1778. This is, you know, the bully. I said, do you not still hear this? Do you not still hear these attributions about black people? So it doesn't matter that it happened in the 1700s, just like the three on their knees, that is what we believe about each other. And we kill each other over that lie. So now we can basically say, if these people are by nature phlegmatic, cunning, lazy, lustful, careless, and governed by caprice, then does this not then justify enslaving them? I've just told you what they are. So now you can go to sleep easily. You can sing hymns at church. Because I've told you now scientifically that that's what they are. Then you have the political arena goes in, that Thomas Jefferson, third president, he says blacks smell bad, we're physically unattractive, which is a little inconsistent with his behavior. But he goes on to say some very important things, because this is taken from his words, Notes on the State of Virginia, the Portable Jefferson. He said we required less sleep. Now, what's interesting about that is I met a sister who is she is a epidemiologist, and she's done some incredible work around sleep deprivation, generational sleep deprivation. Because you got to remember, enslaved Africans, what was the work day? From can't see to can't see, right? There was no rest. Do you know what that does to your body and your brain? So this sister has embarked upon research to look at what that did. And let me tell you something, folks. We are amazing people. We are incredible people. But what he said was we required less sleep to remove some cognitive dissonance he had. He had to say they required less sleep because you work them from can't see to can't see. So we're going to just assert that, and since I'm Thomas Jefferson, then it must be Yeah, it's got to be true. If Thomas Jefferson said it, are you hearing me? Okay. Then he goes on to say that we were dumb, cowardly, and incapable of feeling grief. Now, why would President of the United States say that black people were incapable of feeling grief? He was selling babies out of the hands of mothers, brothers away from brothers and sisters, husbands from wives. He was doing that. And here's what's so crazy. He saw the grief. He heard the screams and shrieks and the begging. He saw it and then asserted they cannot feel grief, to remove his dissonance and to make everybody feel comfortable with their atrocities. Advance it, therefore, as a suspicion only that blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to the whites in the endowments of body and mind. Just asserted it. And then we have medicine. Because now we've made a couple of things. We've said that they're basically folks who cannot think, that are dangerous, that are lustful, that are all of these things which justifies them being enslaved. We're also saying that they have different biological capabilities. Don't worry about working them too hard or being harsh to them because they can't even feel grief. And now we have the father of modern gynecology, J. Marion Sims, who was a physician in the mid-1800s, credited with the creation of the first vaginal speculum, which he made from a pewter spoon. This man built a makeshift hospital in his backyard where he conducted surgical experiments on enslaved African women with no anesthesia. He cut into them and said slave women were able to bear great pain because their race made them more durable, and thus they were well suited for painful medical experimentation. These are people who take an oath to do no harm. He cut into women, girls, and babies. Now you look at that and say, Dr. DeGruy, you seem so passionate about that. What's the issue? This is published 2019, but it was a 2016 survey of 222 white medical students and residents published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, which showed that half of them, of the 222 white medical students, half of them endorsed at least one myth about physiological differences between black people and white people, including that black people's nerve endings are less sensitive than white people's. And when asked to imagine how much pain or white or black patients experience in hypothetical situations, the medical students and residents insisted that black people felt less pain. This made their providers less likely to recommend appropriate treatment. So you go in, your leg is dangling from a thread, and they give you Tylenol. Now, remember, we had an upsurge in heroin addiction. Remember that? It was a crisis of heroin addiction. Heroin addiction's had been in my community my whole life. Heroin addiction in a Latinx community, heroin has always been around, but suddenly it became a crisis when white people, and here's why it happened, because white people were given opiates and black people were given Tylenol. So racism saved us with this last surge. But I want you to connect the dots. See, people don't connect the dots. How could in 2016 you believe that black people don't feel pain like white people? And that's how far-reaching J. Marion Sims' work was. So what does this lead to? My dear sister Harriet Washington wrote a book called Medical Apartheid. I don't know if you've ever read it, but don't read it before you go to sleep at night. Matter of fact, that book did to me what I was afraid post-traumatic would do. It paralyzed me. I was like, I heard her speak to at least 500 people. We were keynotes, both of us here in San Francisco. I couldn't believe it. After her talk, it was like that. There was nobody clapping. You felt like, okay, should I jump off the bridge? And I don't know what I should, because Lord. And I talked to Harriet after that. And because she says it, she also has a flat affect. She kind of talks like this. It's not high, it's not low. It's very matter of fact. This is how it happened. This is what they did. Right? That's how she talked. She said she had not cried in years, is what she told me. So we end up with something called iatrophobia or iatrophobia, and it's the fear of medicine, the fear of the healer, because we don't trust the healer, and we have every reason not to. But as a result of that, it is causing us harm. That's why I pick and choose all of my medical people, everybody I deal with. I interview them. So again, we don't realize we have a choice. And I don't care what your medical care is or what, you have a choice. And if you don't feel good about that person that's telling you something about your body, that's there to maintain your health, ask for another one. You can even smile at them and say, it's been very nice, and then write a long letter as to why you just, if you can't do it on the spot, do it later. But you do not have to accept someone you don't trust. These are things that we have to teach each other. So this is a book, I just recently got this book. It's always hard for me to get these books because, we need to understand where the crazy comes from. So this, Race, Traits, and Tendencies of the American Negro, Frederick L. Hoffman, August 1896. Core argument. The book's central prejudice thesis was that the African American population was on a path toward extinction due to a supposed physical and moral decline caused by inherent race traits. In other words, they believed that we ultimately were going to go extinct. Despite its importance for understanding 19th century racist attitudes, it is considered culturally significant due to its role in shaping discriminatory views, particularly in the life insurance industry. You see, we got to understand why this person noising this now impacts our insurance, which tends to be a little, higher, if you get it at all. Because we've already said that, these folks, it's a waste of time. Now, you know that they recently discovered Neanderthal blood in Europeans, right? And before when they talked about Neanderthals, if you just look in the past, they were like, well, they went extinct, you know what I'm saying? But now they say, well, they were really smart. Have you noticed there's a whole new, narrative about how smart the dead Neanderthals are. Just saying. So what we know based on contemporary science is that race is a concept of society that insists there's a genetic significance behind human variations in skin color that transcends outward appearance. However, race has no scientific merit outside of sociological classifications. Why? Because there are no significant genetic variations within the human species to justify the division of races. Mankind is one. We are one humanity. Win, lose, or draw, that's what we are. 99.99% the same as human beings. Now, here's what I get with white audiences, which is interesting, because they're always looking for just some point that people can distract me and they can either run out of the room, or they're looking for a way to jump ship. So they say, well, there you go. Why are we talking about race? Why are we talking about racism? Race is a myth, and it's not. I said, it's interesting you should say. Race as a biological reality is a myth, but racism is not. So we're going to have to keep talking about it. Interrogating the truth. He that is in the frame cannot see the picture. And that is so much our case. We can't see what's going on because we are in the frame. And if you can't see, get somebody to get out and turn around and look and see what they see. But we got to start looking at what's in the frame. So let's interrogate the truth. So the first thing that amazes me, it's like now there's an individual whose name I will not mention, that whenever they make a statement, we just assume they're lying. Am I telling the truth? I'm not even trying to be harsh. When it comes out, it's going to be a lie. When you just, They actually were recording the numbers of lies. They stopped. It went into thousands and thousands of lies. And this is just a person that you just assume is going to consistently lie. And this is what happens with, and this is always amazing to me, my sister, who I have to credit with a great deal of my courage as it relates to working with academia. She said, Joy, the biggest problem that black people have is that they give white people too much credit. And I didn't understand what she meant by that. But we always make a fundamental assumption that they're telling you the truth. I mean, they're writing the narratives, they own the books, all of those things that may lead you there. Well, there was one of the things that happened when recently they said, we have to get rid of this black history. Civil rights, all that's gone, They're removing all of that. I'm banned. I'm on the ban list all over the country. I'm on the ban list. But not only did they suddenly ban anything that had to do with black history, well, let me just say American history, okay? They banned it because they said it's upsetting the children. These children are feeling guilty and horrible, and it's just, we can't have it. And, the stories are horrific, but we didn't ban studying Holocaust. You talk about horror? We didn't ban that, but we got to ban black history. Because you see, what we are, we cause cognitive dissonance in white people. I really believe that, our very presence. Because they start behaving oddly. I have a friend that's black. I go, okay, what am I supposed to do with that? Because they don't even know why. You see, because no one's ever done the deep dive to realize, why are you inherently uncomfortable in my presence? Is it memory? So when I started hearing this thing about how white kids are upset by the stuff that they learned in black history, I'm going, but then don't read the Bible to them. I'm saying there's some stuff will curl your teeth in there. Come on. All kind of gnarly things are happening and people being, a lot of scary stuff. No. So, but we bought it. They went, we're going to ban the books because. Now, everything that you do, I dare you, if you run a nonprofit or a business and you got a board of directors and you have someone that you have to account for, I dare you to not have some way to measure what you've been able to do. I dare you. We didn't ask for any measurement when they started banning the books. I want you to understand, if you're following their reasoning, then you just basically do the research. Well, in this case, my niece, as part of her job that she had at the time, she shared important historical information with children throughout Oregon. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so she went to Sunnyside School in Oregon, predominantly white, to talk to the middle school students there. She told them about Benjamin Lay and Phyllis Wheatley. She also showed short films. At the end of each lesson, she gave them a worksheet. Here are some of their insightful answers. So for those of you that may not know, Benjamin Lay was an Anglo-American Quaker humanitarian and abolitionist. Of course, Phyllis Wheatley was an American author. So the question that they were given is, why might Thomas Jefferson have written that African people weren't smart or creative? Because that's what he says on the notes on the state of Virginia. So when we look at the answers that they gave, and these are 6th grade white kids, because they weren't allowed to go to school, and when you have power, it's easy to objectify people with no power. Do they feel like you sound like they're scared and shivering with shame and doubt? No. Number 2, because if people started thinking that they were smart and creative, then they might start thinking they were people and not want to enslave them, which would lose him slaves and a lot of money. Well. 3, because he was jealous. And he believed that black people couldn't ever learn or be in importance. 4, because that is what he wanted people to think. It's easier to objectify people if you think of them as lesser than you. 5, so he could look better or feel better about himself, feel more superior. 6, because he is racist. 7, because they didn't give them an education. These are what white 6th grade students were responding. So their parents weren't worried that they would feel terrible and awful. They were worried about this. These children were real clear on what was going on. And guess what? They're not going to follow in the footsteps of their parents. Does this make sense? Because you see, that's what they don't want. They don't want them mixed breeding with us. They don't want them interacting with us, because if they do, they'll find out what's true. So they're moving us back to Jim Crow. They're already changing the lines. Just saying. So in his book, Notes on the State of Virginia, this is a statement from Thomas Jefferson. Comparing them by their faculties of memory, reason, and imagination, it appears to me that in memory they are equal to the whites, in reason much inferior, and that in imagination they are dull, tasteless, and anomalous. But never could I find that a black had uttered a thought above the level of plain narration, never see even an elementary trait of painting or sculpture. This is what he said. Now, you got to remember that the Notes on the State of Virginia were to convince his countrymen back home that they weren't horrible people, which is what they thought about them back home. Lustful, lazy, all of those were attributed to white people. And Thomas Jefferson is trying to help them understand, once again, going back to what Linnaeus said, they deserve what we do to them. Okay, so I decided just, to look back at the times we're talking about and see what kind of art had been produced.
Okay.
Nope, can't produce art or any creative anything. I was careful to make certain, that some of this, when I look at these folks, Malcolm, Harriet, W.E.B., Fannie Lou Hamer, Carter G. Woodson, Elizabeth Eckford, we're looking, can you imagine what it was like for them? I mean, I don't even know. I'd be dead. That's all I could think of. Is I'd be dead, because my dad, my mom raised us not to bend. So, yeah. Whoops, sorry. The other thing that we need to also understand is that our history did not begin with enslavement, right? Again. So, this is not obscure. What I'm showing you here, this is not obscure. The kingdom of Kush, the land of Punt, Carthage, the kingdom of Aksum, the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, the Great Zimbabwe. These are not, and when you look at what they were doing, we had folks running around in caves. This is what we was doing. And it's interesting because this is just simply left out. We're talking about people who are dealing in ebony, gold, exotic animals, silver, copper, textiles. Well, come on. They're trading. They're doing these things. These are empires that our children never see. And for each one of these, there are books written. That's how impactful they were and are. But again, we just make a fundamental assumption that, what we got is what was true. What are we doing? Please, if we have people who are going to be educators, please understand you need to research and publish. You have to do it. You have to do it. Or AI will. So I'm going to give you some case studies. Again, I want to fold in past with present. I work for an organization, POIC, I've been working for them for over 15 years as a consultant. And they're a private nonprofit, pretty successful. OICs are all over the country, actually, if you look up what they are. And they're really trying to help really black kids and kids of color learn trades and skills that allow them to survive in an environment that is inherently racist. I mean, that's essentially what POIC does. So what happened was, because I was the one that wrote their model, and I'm going to share a little bit of the model, but I'm the one that comes in. I happen to be in town in Portland at the time because I have family there, my fault. But I happen to be in the city for a couple of days, and they're getting ready to go to the city council to beg for money. Every year you gotta go beg for money, right? So you have this, and everything about the city council is upsetting to me. You're down here with the little mic, and they're up in a little up in the thing. I don't like none of that. Sit down right here with us. Why you got to be up there, right? The whole thing, the dominant submissive. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't like all of that. So I was feeling some kind of way. But they were saying to me, Joy, since you're here and we're getting ready to, we put in a proposal to be refunded, it would be great for you to be here. I'm like, I don't know, the punch that they were going to get at the end. I'm going to come in and, I don't know, I'm the closer. I don't know. So I'm sitting there, and the young woman, her name is Kim Phillip. And Kim is, you talk about cross the T's, dot the I's. She comes up, she has her charts. These are how many families have come in. These are the numbers that we have moved from crisis to stable to thriving. She's got all the little charts, the bar charts and everything, which all is saying, so give us some more money. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we talk about. So give us the money, right? So she finishes, and I'm sitting there, and one of the city council members says, Dr. DeGruy, we would love to hear from you and what you are feeling about the families, right? So I'm sitting there for a moment. Of course, Kim is looking at me, sweating now. She's going, what are we, Joy? Joy. Because I'm silent. I'm silent because I'm trying to collect myself. So I say to the councilwoman, I said, I'm willing to bet my life that when you say family and we say family, we're not talking about the same thing. I said, let me give you one. There's a young man, because remember, this program is adjudicated youth. These are youth that get in trouble with the law, and now they folded into this program to try to steer them away and never have them enter the adult system, right? It's usually petty theft, things that are not, we're not talking about major high crimes and misdemeanors. We're talking about kids, right? And so the purpose of this is to try to help them matriculate into a more positive, lifestyle. So I said, let me tell you about one of our kids. He violated a restraining order. That's how he ended up landing in the program. He was in violation of a restraining order. Oh, that sounds really bad, doesn't it? So he's 18 years old, which means that he was teetering on it becoming an adult charge. But we were able to keep it from that. I said, let me tell you about this young man. Now, poor Kim is looking at me like, what are we doing? I took us home. We were good. I said, so let me tell you a little bit about this kid. He lives in the cold house with his 3 younger siblings because there's no electricity there. While his mom, right about Tuesday, Wednesday, goes to her boyfriend's apartment. That would be the warm spot. And occasionally, he runs out of money to feed his 3 younger siblings. So he had no other choice than to go to his mother, who is with the boyfriend in the warm house. And that's where he caught the charge. I said, so when you think family, were you thinking that? Because let me tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the only mature adult is him. But I bet you weren't thinking that. They gave us twice the amount of money. My point here is that we doing the dog and pony, but we don't have to. I ain't bowing down. I'm not selling out my community. I'm not doing anything, and I'm not going to act like you're an expert because you don't have a clue about the families we're dealing with. I said they come to us so we can help them become family. But you're asking us how our families are. I read them. Because I was resentful that you're sitting here making a decision about something you know nothing about. And I just want you to know that I know that. But again, and I know it's just touch and go. It could have gone the wrong way, clearly, right? But I just, there was a part of truthfulness I had to show up with. And not the begging, oh, we're so grateful for the crumbs you send us that aren't enough. So, this is what I love. My daughter, Dr. Bahia Cross Overton, actually, is the executive director of the Black Parent Initiative. And here is something that based on the model that I have written and based on the information we have gotten and based on our own research and collecting our own data, by the way, collect your own data. Data can be stories. Do you hear me? They're much richer and yield much more results than Likert scale 1 to 10 and everybody picks 5. Doesn't tell you anything, right? So she says, at Black Parent Initiative, we never use disparaging language to describe our community. We are not deficient people. I often have to remind our funders that we have everything we need in order to thrive. We frequently hear overused, deficient language to describe the families that we serve: underserved, underrepresented, underachieving, disparate, subgroups, gaps. We use affirming language: emerging, promising, growing. We are innovative, creative, loving, brilliantly gifted, and that all we truly need is for institutions and organizations that have historically oppressed us to stop. We are not experiencing the current challenges and disparities because we put ourselves in these situations. Generations of discriminatory and exclusionary practices and policies have produced the disparities. We invite funders to join us in restoration. We are not seeking handouts, but cultural and community reparation. Now she hands that to him, says it to him. You know, she was in one meeting and she said they named our kids as a subgroup. And my daughter said, why are you calling them a subgroup? Because, you know, subgroup. And well, what would you have us call them? A group. Why do they have to be a subgroup? You see what I'm saying? Even the language, the normalizing of that. And we're like, oh yeah, we got problems, we're in crisis. We do that and we lose our own dignity. I'm not doing that. Now, I told you I work for the Global Circle for Reparations and Healing. There's a collective healing initiative. One of the things that we are promoting is part of UNESCO. I'm part of UNESCO. International dialogue and inquiry in global communities. Development of futures forming leadership. Anybody who's here, if you are a senior person or if you're a director, a manager, or a supervisor, are you thinking about replacing yourself? Are we mentoring folks to help replace us? Because you gotta go. Listen, I tell, and people know, you guys remember, if any of you were here, when we had the fish fry, we have Rocky, my brother here. We went, took the kids fishing. They didn't want to fish. They were mad, didn't want to put on the T-shirts. By the end of the day, they were experts helping people they didn't even know, trying to help. Then we had brought all the fish back. Dr. Joy wasn't on the stage. I was back there cleaning fish. Because sometimes that's what I need to do. I need to move the chairs around. I don't have to have the mic. You know, and it's interesting because one of the things that Randall Robinson said to me, who wrote the foreword to my book originally, he said that the problem with black leadership is our black leaders came to do good, but stayed to do well. Stayed too long. Don't know when I'm going to yank the mic out your hand. Sit down somewhere. You know, we cannot figure out how to let go of it. Those are unhealed behaviors, by the way. Those are unhealed behaviors. Behaviors like, oh, you know, I heard Janice got a promotion. Wasn't that nice? She ain't going to be able to keep that position. Right after saying it. Oh, she ain't going to be able to keep it. Now, girl, I know what you mean because, you know, next thing you know, we down the rabbit hole of unhealed behavior. Let me tell you what I believe is the first sign of spiritual maturity. The first sign of it is to delight in the success of your neighbor. To delight in their success. And you got to ask yourself why you can't do it. You got to start going deep to figure out why is it you can't feel good about that person. And see, I think that goes all the way back to enslavement and abandonment. I really believe that. We're looking at a policy brief on community regeneration towards collective healing, social justice, and global well-being. And what we have here is generational. We have folks from various different backgrounds working collectively together. This is the issue. The biggest tool in the hands of the oppressor, let me tell you what makes them confident. That we will never be able to come together. They're banking on it. They're banking on us never being able to come together. And that is happening because of unhealed behavior. So we know that one of the things that we have to also help our children understand, because our children they have no historical memory. So children, grandchildren, they need to understand what we are capable of, hence all that information I shared on the front end about who we are and who we were, including all of the amazing things that Africa and Africans and people of African descent have produced. Black prosperity has provoked white resentment that can make life exhausting for people of color, and it has led to undoing of policies that have nurtured black advancement. This was an article written in 2023. This is Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now here's what happened. Of course we know that white people started going, we don't want you around, we hate you, we hate you. We don't want to have to be near you, we don't have to live near you, we don't have to see you, because of course we produce cognitive dissonance in them. They are reminded of their barbarism every time they see us. So we went away. And we built our own schools, our own banks, our own businesses, hospitals, all schools. We had our own. They're parade down the middle of the street. You see that? Booming. They called it Black Wall Street. So we did go away and build for ourselves, which they begged because of their own ignorance. They believe, oh, they can't function without us. They need to be managed, these people. They need to be directed because, you see, they are by nature, like Aristotle said, they're natural slaves. They really believe that. And then when they saw this, they were like, hold it. We did want you to be away from us, but we did not mean for you to prosper. That we didn't want. And they saw prosperity here. And they said, we can't have them believing they can do that. But our children, you see, have never seen this. That's all black. For the young people in the room, that's all black. All black people. Handling it so well that wealth was abounding. When they said, we want you away from us, segregated. And this is what they did. This is what they did. Planes had only just been invented, 1921. And the very first bombing was Tulsa. First they beat, brutalized, raped, burned, and then they bombed. And then those of us that were left over, oh my God, I just came from Tulsa. My husband and I just came from Tulsa. It was hard to watch what they have done. They have people who are still alive that were seeking reparations. Still alive, 100 years old. And you know what that state, that city said that they were going to do? We'll wait them out. We'll drag it through court just long enough for them to die. And there was a white man, a billionaire, I believe, who stepped in and said, you know what, this is immoral, it's humiliating, it's embarrassing. He gave each family $3 million out of his own pocket because he saw the immorality. You see, and then when he did that, he exposed everybody. You see, he exposed everybody. How evil can you be? There wasn't that many of them left. But we're not going to give you anything. And they know what they did. And you have to ask yourself, what is the character of people who will do this? And who do you think, anybody get, arrested? Any big, no, because it was just black people. It's okay to kill black people. Now, why do I get this thing? This is a new thing, sorry. So I talked to you about the fear of annihilation. This shows up in various documents. Again, I'm going to integrate all this through so you can understand that pathological fear. So the first fear in this, I won't read it, but this is based on the Oregon Territory and the exclusionary acts that were put in place. The problem here, the fear was that the Negroes were going to hook up with the Indians, and you know, everybody black think they Indian, you're not. But the blacks are going to hook up with the Indians, they're going to have a bunch of children, they're going to kill all the white people. That's the fear here. So we don't want them coming together and having a bunch of babies and killing the white people. Because the fear that white people have is that that's what we're going to do. If we were going to kill them, we'd have done that a long time ago, right? But let's just move on. Now, what's interesting about this is they're saying based on self-preservation, we can't let them hook up. So now we have, according to a mid-1800s census taken back at the time that this was written, there were 600,000 mixed-race children born. I'm going to say it again. 600,000 mixed-race babies were born when it was illegal to be with somebody of another race. That's a lot of sneaking out back, you think? In fact, it's not sneaking out back, and it's not black men and men of color. I got 5 minutes left? 5? You said 5? Okay. Let me get myself together. Okay, so what we do know is that these numbers have a lot to do with the rape of women of color. That's where it came from. I love this. It is certain in any case, that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. Let me say that again. It is certain in any case that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. And that is precisely what we have in this country. Ignorance allied with power. Trump administration cuts to aid for Africa and black infant maternal health. So here's what we need to know, that on the very first day he took office, the first thing he did was cut off aid to Africa. Very first thing he did. Remember I showed you those numbers? Remember I showed you that fear and that other one? That was the first thing he did. A Boston University infectious disease expert calculated that the cuts could result in more than 570,000 deaths, with a concentration in Africa, particularly from HIV/AIDS programs in sub-Saharan Africa. He knew and wants Africa to die. Look at what's going on in the Congo. Look closely. There is no incentive to save the people of the Congo. Still not going to work, though, by the way. Of course, you know, Malcolm said, if you stick a knife 9 inches into my back, pull it out 3 inches, not progress. Even if you pull it all the way out, not progress. Progress is healing the wound. America hasn't begun to pull out the knife. So I'm going to move quickly through this because I don't have time to do it. But I want to go to what we are doing right now so that you can kind of get a better idea of the answer. So there's a global movement confronting the lie. UNESCO, Routes of Enslaved Peoples Project, which I'm also part of, is first to deconstruct the discourses based on the concept of race that justify these systems of exploitation. 2, to promote the contributions of people of African descent in the general progress of humanity, and to question the social, cultural, and economic inequalities inherited from this tragedy. We are looking at the negative challenges we are facing now: tax on civil rights, DEI, voting, rolling back voting rights, economic disparities, healthcare disparities, increase in suicides among black youth. Suicide among African American youth in the U.S. is rising, and it's doing so more rapidly than any other demographic group. This troubling increase spans across age ranges and underscores critical gaps in mental health care, access, cultural responsiveness, and systemic rapport. So when we start looking at all this, y'all know the resolution passed. The resolution that stated that the transatlantic trafficking of African people was the worst example of crimes against humanity to date. 123 countries voted, yes, that is true. 3 voted against it. That would be Israel, the United States, and Argentina. 52 were in abstention. Those were the cowards that throw rocks from the bushes. But you need to know it's on record now. The resolution passed. And we're going to get pushback from everywhere because of that. Because you see, now you can't get the bird back once you done released it from the cage. And where we are now is the world is beginning to see. This is a permanent forum on people of African descent. This is in April of 2026 that we were there, my husband, myself, my crew who were with me during that time, understanding that this forum was to figure out, now that it's out there, what are we going to do? So one of the things that has happened, this is the Accra Summit. This was the Accra Summit Centering Healing in March of 2025. From that summit, we now have the Global Circle for Reparations and Healing, which put that on. We're having, and I want to do, you should do a screening of this. If I can, I'll come back. This is the documentary that we have put together based on the summits, 2 summits. This is looking at, now this is the first time ever. That is a Jewish gentleman on the right. I was the other speaker. He spoke about Holocaust. I spoke about the transatlantic slave trade. That never has happened. And that was a UN meeting. This is Accra Summit 1. I'm rolling it up. Accra Summit 1. This is the president of Ghana who I'm standing next to there because he pulled me over there because I was the only one his height. I didn't know at the time why he had pulled me over to stand next to him. But anyway, President Nana Akufo-Addo officially offered reparations in the form of full citizenship and land ownership for the descendants of those who had been enslaved. In other words, he's saying reparations first and foremost must come from Africa. And whatever level, though it was forced complicity that they had with this transatlantic trafficking. Here is UNESCO Third Global Forum Against Racism and Discrimination. See, these are not things that people are aware are happening, that we need to plug into. And here again was the very first forum. None of us could even speak the same language, but that's how many people that are committed to actually healing the wounds. And our approach, I talked to you about our core values, unhealed behaviors, trust versus distrust, trustworthiness, instead of backbiting and divisiveness, honesty, lying and deception, care, disregard ideas, thoughts of others. We basically go through these agendas because they show up in meetings, don't they? Yeah. Right, so we need to start calling them out and saying we can't do that. Right, so we have practical application, applying cultural wisdom and place-based knowledge, really understanding that we need to get the younger generation involved. I will end there. Because what I would go on to show you is that we've been dealing with this, which happened to indigenous people as well. You know that they went after indigenous people. They found, we met with the Pope. We were supposed to meet with him. He couldn't be there because he was here trying to put out the fires associated with mass graves of Indian children. Well, guess what? We took that to the Vatican. Okay, we went to the Vatican. And you know what? They apologized and said, overdue. Reparations are overdue from the Catholic Church because we wrote it in our canons to destroy Africa. They don't even try to say they didn't because they wrote it in. So I'm just saying to you that the Global Circle is doing the work. Other global organizations, we're not by ourselves. And if anything else, do not buy into anything that fractures us. Can I say that? Please, let's not do that. Let's not do that. You know, we don't all have to be doing the same thing. We don't all have to agree, but we do have to work together. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to end with that. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's give our sister a standing ovation.